Hello, lovely listeners. Today I am joined by Dan, and we are going to be giving you I think today's episode, and if you've not noticed yet, there's an attachment in the show notes, is very like action-packed and very practically helpful. Because when I spoke with Dan, what I understood that he does actually brilliantly is really around onboarding and welcoming new people. So anyway, I'm going to let Dan introduce himself before we get into it. So hi, Dan.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Dan. I am head of people and culture at Amplify. We're a data consultancy. And I have worked for Amplify now for about 6 years. And I really moved into like the HR space then. I started off in dreaded recruitment about 10 years ago and slowly found my way into the kind of people and culture area, where I look after all things recruitment, HR, contracts, keeping people happy, trying to improve people's happiness. And I know we're going to talk about a lot today, onboarding, which is a big part of it for me.
Yes, absolutely. And I love, and when you and I spoke, so firstly, when you were able to share what you shared with me, which now you've very graciously made a version that we can make public for everyone, which I think is just so powerful. So for anyone that's onboarding, you can just literally click the link and see the whole document that we're going to be talking through and the why behind it. But one of the things that you said to me in conversation that really stuck with me was so many people are thinking about the impression that you make once someone is in the room, and this
Hmm.
what you've done is stand by your values and focus on the impression even before someone's in the room.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. I think for me, what's really important is you almost answer people's questions before they have them. Like I'm a bit of a worrier, and if I'm joining a new company, I'll worry about the littlest things. Where am I going to park? What sort of clothes, or do they mean business casual, or do they just mean casual? Like, can I wear shorts? And I just thought, why not build something that can just answer all those questions so that on day one, when someone logs on, they're just like, oh, I know the answer to that already. Like, I don't need to worry because some people think they're bothering you asking a question like that, right? They're not. But if I can answer it without them having to ask me in the first place, everyone's a winner.
I think that completely. A lot of organizations are looking further into like how do we create psychological safety. And this, exactly as you said, is a way to do it, like answering those questions ahead of time so people know what to expect. The unknown is what feels psychologically unsafe. And I just think your document really covers like angles that I've not heard of before, like the parking, like the conversation, and like some of the other things that we're going to get into. But can you tell me a little bit about how you developed it?
Yeah, I mean, it developed from bad experiences in the past, to be honest with you. It's that example of starting a job and your partner or whoever saying like, "Oh, what are you up to tomorrow?" And you're like, I haven't got a clue. I do not have a clue what I'm doing this week. And I used to hate that. So I just started it off by saying, why don't we just build a 2 week plan so someone knows where they're going to be for 2 weeks? As basic as that. And if you've got kids and you've got your kid in nursery and stuff like that, there's certain days that you probably best not travel. So it's good to know that straight away. And then as I built it, I started to add in stuff like this is what you do with email signatures, or this is the font that we use, and all that kind of stuff. And it eventually built out to be like a 30-page slideshow, which hopefully answers absolutely everything, but also adds a bit of fun to it as well, because I think culture's a big part of it, and telling someone what to do normally is quite boring. I've tried to make it a bit more conversational and light-hearted and funny, and add in the stuff like about Slack. If you've never used Slack before and you log on day one, you're going to be sitting there thinking, what is this? Like, who are these people talking to me? I don't even know who they are. So we developed the org chart to show, this person is this. But also, if you're on Slack and you like football, we've got a football channel. We've got a parents channel called Gin and Phonics, where you can say, what do you do if the little one's been a nightmare and someone else has probably been through it. But it's about kind of creating that community and someone feeling welcome just from day one, ideally.
Yes, and I think you mentioned a really powerful thing that, I mean, you mentioned a few that I want to go into a bit more, but it's a way to also practice your culture and
Hmm.
not practice, but also communicate. That's what I was thinking of. Communicate your culture, and you did do that well. And just so in case you aren't going to click the link, which you definitely should, the download. I remember reading about the Slack channel, and it just immediately says like we're friendly, we're social, we like each other, it's not all serious. And we do have channels around, I think it was like beer and like
Yeah,
parents and all this fun stuff. And it shows that you guys have a culture, like a community focused culture.
absolutely. And it's that part of like not everyone's job links at work. Like, for example, we've got data consultants, project managers, and all that kind of stuff. Our roles very rarely cross over unless they need me for something. Whereas I like to think that I know them all personally through things like Slack, for example, football, what films we all watch. We got the music channel where we talk about music and all that kind of stuff. And that helps that when I'm speaking to someone, my first question isn't, how's work? It's more, how's the little one? Or did you enjoy that gig last night? Or whatever it might be. And that adds that friendliness to it that I like to think people really enjoy about working at Amplify. It's that come and speak to me because I'm not just Dan, a HR guy. I've got a personality too, and I'm more than happy to have a chat with you, kind of thing.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Um, so actually, I'm gonna jump a little bit to I want to go back to the weekly planning because I think that's a
Yeah,
big point that you guys do. But because you've just spoken about like I'm Dan and getting to know your people, I think one of the amazing things that you guys also offer is like a what's like my working preferences style document, which we'll also link in the show notes. So can you talk me through firstly the idea of doing that and what you decided to include and what it's created?
yeah. So the main purpose of it is inclusivity. It's to make people realize that not everybody works the same way. Some people love phone calls, some people detest phone calls. Some people like a message that says, have you got 5 minutes? Whereas other people, when they get that message, will think the complete worst straight away. So what I wanted to do was build a document whereby people can put their working style, a little bit about themselves into it, and it will just give you an idea of how they like to work. Like I haven't got mine in front of me, but it will say something like, I like Slack. I use Slack a lot. If I get a phone call to my mobile, I tend to think that's pretty bad. So I'm a big Teams user and I quite like this. But also, we've got people who will hate being on camera. And it's just to let them know that that's okay. Like, people can understand that that's the way that you like to work. Um, so in there, there's a lot about your own working style, which everybody is obviously completely different. It could be about working hours, even working days if you work part time. But there's in there about stuff about yourself as well, and that's to create that common ground. So mine will talk about the bands that I love because I'm big into music, I'm big into football, about my little one and the dog probably popping up on Teams calls. She might pop up in a minute if we get lucky. And it's just that kind of thing where someone can see that I've got a miniature Dachshund and they'll go, I love sausage dogs. Can you get her on the screen? And it tends to be that I just pick her up and just hold her like that, to be honest. But it's that creating the common ground, especially when someone's new. When you're having a first chat with someone, you can read their working with me guide and be like, right, brilliant. I know how to approach this person. They
Yeah.
probably just want to chat over Slack and might not want to have a phone call. That's fine.
Yes. Yes, it makes it way less intimidating. And I also love what you shared about when we spoke previously that you added about liking documentaries into yours, and someone that had worked with you for a while was like, I never knew
Yeah.
that about you. And then suddenly you've been able to evolve this
We
whole different
we've
conversation.
literally worked together for 4 years, had many, many days and many nights together.
Yeah.
And one day you come up to me, I didn't know you loved that document. I was like, but I can't stop watching those. And it's all of a sudden, that's all now we talk about. We very rarely talk about work. But it just goes to show you can know someone really, really well. And you never really talk about something because it's not really work related and you don't cross that bridge. But when it's in front of someone, they can say, oh God, I love that as well.
Yeah.
And I love the thought of that with a new person, having a real passion, seeing someone else with that passion, and then almost creating a friend instantly.
Yes, yes. And again, I just think it makes it easy because when I do think when you join, my experience of joining new companies is, very surface level conversation, the common things to speak about. What were you doing before? Where
Yeah.
do you live? Are you with a partner? Do you have kids? All that, like, and this is like, okay, that's who you are, but
Mm,
what do you enjoy? Like,
yeah.
what's unique about you? And it feels just really, really, you're giving people a connection point.
Yeah. You're making it easy for everyone to understand rather than saying it's very rarely. that I'm going to talk to someone for the first time and tell them that I like brutalist architecture. That's not really the first thing that I go to. But if it's in front of you to tell you that, we might start a conversation on it. And that's that thing of just making people feel included, because not everyone's outgoing. Some people are super introverted. And it's hard to get that information out of people.
Yeah. So I think it's really innovative for two reasons. One, this is how I prefer to work. This is my communication style. If you want something from me, when I was a junior and I was contacting other heads of teams, and I used to like, to have that information so you can be respectful and show like, hey, I've listened,
Yeah,
instead of not having the information and tiptoeing around.
exactly.
It's hugely powerful for both sides, but then the personal side as well, and having the opportunity to build relationships faster, sooner, and say, hey, I saw you like this, I like this too, this thing is going on tomorrow night, or did you see this, or whatever it might
Yeah.
be. It's not only is it helpful and useful, I think it also is a signal of the culture that you guys are creating.
I hope so. I hope it means that people can get started and understand what we're about from the start, really. And that's that I like to think that we're friends as well as colleagues,
Yeah.
ideally.
Yes. Exactly. And just to say, by the way, if anyone listening, like you might not have the same values as Dan and as Amplify, and I don't think that can take. Don't let this take away from like what would you like to test? What would you like to implement from this? We're not giving you these two documents so you can copy and paste. I mean, you can. Dan very generously has said, "Yeah, give it.
Go
I want
for
to
it.
help people." And also, I just encourage you to say, like, if there's parts of it that aren't for you, then that's okay too. Not every organization is going to have the same culture.
Yeah.
So let's speak about the 2 week plan, because this is also kind of mind blowing. And I think when we speak about psychological safety, when we speak about taking care and taking responsibility for the people, and we think about making it as comfortable as possible for people to sit in. So talk through, and if you guys have the slide open, you can just go see week 1, week 2, and the way that Dan breaks it down. But will you talk us through a little bit?
Yeah. Again, it's to reassure people and let them plan ahead is the ultimate goal. But it's split into 3 areas, which are where, which tends to be at home. We're a remote first company, so we're at home a lot. With, which is who you're going to be meeting, who's dictating that day, who the person is that you're going to start to learn from or shadow or whatever it might be. And then most importantly, like the what. So what is it that you're going to be doing? Are you learning about that? Are you learning about this? Are you doing more onboarding? Whatever it might be. And this came again from my own experience. And when I joined, we were a lot less mature as a company. And I got an email, I think it was on the Friday before I joined on the Monday. And I was in York, Leeds, Warwick, and London in my first week. I had no trains booked. I had no hotels booked. And I remember thinking, holy, what am I going to do? Like, I don't even know how to use expenses or anything like that. It was all fine. And I needn't worry because everyone was so reassuring when I joined. It turned out everyone had booked my tickets for me anyway. But it created a worry in me. And I remember thinking, right, we need to just get this out to people a lot earlier than the working day before they start. So we tend to send this out at least a week before they get started, and it tells them exactly where, not just that you're going to be in London. It will give an address and it will book hotels for people and all that kind of stuff. But also we try and make sure it's good for us to focus on the what area to make sure that they're learning everything they need to in their first 2 weeks and we're not missing anything. So each manager will have a checklist of, if it's sales, this is what a proposition looks like. This is how we write RFPs and all that kind of stuff. And it makes sure that from our perspective as a HR team, each new joiner is learning everything they should. So we're giving them the tools to be able to run away after week 2. And I know it takes a lot longer to get really good at what you do, but we're giving them what we need to from the start. So it was mainly around allaying any fears for people, basically, because I think I'm a planner. I know not everyone is, but I quite like knowing what's happening tomorrow, especially if I'm new. Because if it was in my job, for example, and I'm going through recruitment on day 2, I know that I'm turn my recruitment brain on and start to think about areas that I've thought about in the past that I can improve and implement. And it's the one area we get fantastic feedback on the onboarding pack, but that's the area that really gets people going. I really appreciate that because my little one's in nursery Monday and Tuesday. You knew that, so you put me at home on Monday and Tuesday. That kind of thing is the kind of win that we get from it is to know that their life is important as well, and we're not just going to throw them from pillar to post, because looking after your kids and picking them up from nursery and school, that's more important, and you can do that and work at the same time. So that, yeah, that's the area. I would highly recommend anyone listening or watching to do the same. It's really, really good.
Yes. And at least to start, right? Like Dan, you guys, from the sound of things, have really locked this in and tied this into a really high level. And even with the what, I can imagine some people listening are like, well, I don't know exactly what, because like
Yeah.
whatever, it's like there's something very powerful about making the decision and then being willing to learn from that decision, and iterating and making it better and better. So I think just be willing to try imperfectly.
Yeah.
Don't be intimidated by what Dan's sharing, by the fact that they've locked it in so tight, because I think the reason you've locked it in so tight, in fact, I know the reason, and you can speak to this, is because another amazing thing that you guys do is ask for feedback on this process.
Yeah, I think that's the most important part of any people and culture role, is to, when you've tried something, see what people think and let them be honest. So we do a lot of anonymous surveys because I tend to find they're quite powerful in the sense that people will be really honest. But again, that's what I want. So what we do at the end of someone's probation, which is 3 months for us, we have a half an hour to an hour call with them, and we sit them down and we just talk about how that first 3 months has gone, what's been good, what hasn't been good, what we can do better. And that's pretty much how this pack has been built. You know, some people might have been doing it and going through the day-to-day stuff, and they said, oh, I wish I knew more about Slack. Well, that was probably when I added the Slack bit in there. You know, they're helping me do my job better, but you know, in turn, helping the next person. You know, there's loads of things that I can't think of because I've not been through this process for 6 years, and it's completely changed since I did. And that was a big part of that is the "it's okay to" section, which I think towards the end.
Yeah.
Um, and that section is what our employees told us. So we sent an anonymous survey to people to say, what do you think it's okay to do here that you probably would question elsewhere? And it's another part of that bit that I was saying to you about letting them know the culture from the start. You know, it's okay if you don't want to have your camera on. That's absolutely fine. If you're the sort of person that likes to get your head down for 4 hours in the afternoon and not take calls, block your time out. That's fine. A lot of companies might not like that, and they might be a bit more rigid in how you work. We're not. We like to think that we're very open to stuff. So a big part of that on my perspective is just putting your hand up and saying, I don't know how to do this. A lot of people, myself included in the past, have thought they might think that I'm not very good if I say that. But actually it's the best way to learn. So we built out a whole slide on there to basically just show people from the get-go, all these things, they're okay. If you're the
Yes.
sort of person that finds a funny side in stuff, great. I genuinely quite like that. You know, I'm not that serious and businessy, so we can just be like friends if you want to. That's okay. And that's another one that we get some really good feedback on that.
Yes, I think it's genius too, because it's what exactly that question, what surprises you that you know, about us that you haven't experienced before, almost like what would you say you didn't expect that was a pleasant surprise,
Yeah.
or just a surprise either way, hopefully a pleasant one.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see the funny side, Dan. Um, and it's brilliant because firstly it keeps iterating, but it allows for people to come in from different experiences, because that's the issue for a lot of organizations, is when you are hiring, when you are growing, you cannot assume that everyone has had the same experience and has the same assumptions and therefore the same expectations.
Yeah.
I think like going to your people and asking them, I think it's just genius.
Mm. Yeah, we got some fantastic feedback on it, and it's about just letting people know that things like, if your little one is at home and they're not very well, take the day. Like, that's okay. It's not a weakness to do that. That's a lot more important than your job. There's a load of things like that that people, especially when they first get started, are too scared to ask.
Yes.
And we've all been there, right? It's not a fun question to say things like that, but we want them to know that that's okay because we all go through it. Like, one of them on there is you can reach out to anyone in the business and we can have a chat with them. And it's true. We're not hierarchical whatsoever. And I don't want people that have been at companies that see a job title as like a weapon to be, oh, I can't reach out to them. Have you seen their job title? really doesn't matter. We're all in it together, and if they can help you, they will.
Yes, yes, and that's exactly. It's like I just hope everyone listening is seeing how much of this is a culture communication,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and you can use it to also communicate your culture if that's different to theirs, right?
Yeah.
And again, a very easy way to do it is going to be to survey your people
Hmm.
anonymously and say what surprised you about working here, or what would you want to know ahead of time that you didn't know now.
Yeah.
So I think it's like it doesn't have to be. I also think it doesn't have to be this like heavy, massive workload. It can be like conversational.
Yeah, definitely.
I also love that you share on the welcome pack, well, onboarding pack, about the swag.
Yeah.
Talk to us a bit about
Yeah, so we give people a allowance every year for merch. And our merch is pretty popular, and we've got the hoodies and the t-shirts. I should have worn mine really for this.
that.
And basically we want people to feel included from day one. And I know that for a lot of people that is part of feeling included. It's almost like you're wearing your team shirt.
Mhm.
And obviously we're a remote first company, so a lot of people wear that on calls to prospective clients or projects or whatever it might be. But I like to think of that as like it's almost like making them feel part of the gang straight away, because they can go and buy that at any point they want and then expense it when they join. So we've got everything from socks, Illumina's pink socks, to our t-shirts, our hoodies. We've got amplified baby grows, which are very popular. And it's that kind of thing of, obviously we've got like a parents channel where we all vent our frustrations. But when someone has a newborn and they put them in their Amplify baby grow, it is one of the cutest things you've ever seen. But that again, I would hate someone to join a call from day one and see someone in an Amplify hoodie and think, that's cool. I wonder how I get that. Well, they
Yeah.
know the answer. I've given them the answer already. And they can go and get themselves something. And obviously it's not costing them a penny as well, which kind of helps.
Yeah. Yes. I think it's fun. I think it like again, I'm not showing everything Dan's doing for everyone to be like, I must do it Dan's way, but
Oh,
just
absolutely, yeah.
there's so much creativity that's gone into the onboarding process and this document and the how I work and everything that you've created that you can see it's come through so much learning. And I think that's, I mean, I'm even going to ask you, what do you think is the key to really creating a successful onboarding document?
I think I alluded to it earlier, but giving people that full picture immediately, for some it might be quite a lot to take in and stuff, but others use it as a reference book to go and look at for when they've got certain questions. And I think for me, if I can give people as much as possible right from the start, or even before they've started, that makes them feel like part of the gang straight away. And I think that's really important. Like, I think you touched on it there, but this our culture book is, to certain other company, might be completely rubbish. And it's important to reiterate, we're a remote first company. A lot of our onboarding is done remotely. We've got an office, but if someone lives local, we can go and meet them. But all this is made predominantly for someone that is going to be chatted to over Teams. You know, there's things that in culture of office-based companies like lunches out or drinks after work and all that kind of stuff, we can't do that because we don't work in the office every day. So this is what works for us. But I definitely think that that's a bit of a template that people can amend to what works for them. Especially that feeling of inclusion, just giving people the idea, like, I know obviously we've got in there about our office, and if someone wants to come in, just letting them know where to park, letting them know, more importantly, where the free parking is. You know, it's that planning ahead. You know when you're going somewhere for the first time and you think, oh, right, how do I get there? Where do I park? Is it where I can get petrol on the way and all that kind of stuff? So we try and answer those questions of, if you drive, this is where you can park. If you get the train, this is the nearest train station, and we've drawn out where you walk and all that kind of stuff. I just don't want people to be worrying about work before they've even started. You know, it shouldn't be a worry. It should be something you look forward to. And I think if you've got the answers, you'll look forward to it a lot more than you would if you were worrying.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And I think that's a huge point that you just made, which is, I think more companies are offering remote, hybrid, flexible, all of that. And I wonder how many have updated their onboarding
Yeah.
adequately to, I think oftentimes we're changing policies and not always thinking about how that impacts other things. So I think this is really powerful for anyone that's doing remote or testing remote or doing more flexible, like if you are changing those things, just to bear in mind, like Dan said, what there's certain things that have been taken away, you're going to balance that.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah, it's always a work in progress. Like, you know, if any of our most recent new joiners said, "Oh, have you tried this to talk about this?" I'd add it in. You know, anything that I think is beneficial, it's going to get added. So it's evolving all the time. But I think for me, that just makes it better and better.
yes. And I think also to speak about, because you shared about surveys and like when people see when they give feedback, it's implemented, it
Yeah.
creates more of a culture of actually giving more feedback. So I think that's brilliant too.
It makes them feel valued, doesn't it? And that's the important bit.
Yes. Well, thank you, Dan, for coming, for sharing your expertise, for sharing the why behind it, for giving a literal hard copy example that people can read through themselves. I think that sometimes is the most valuable thing, to literally see and to move it
Yeah.
out of theory into practice. So I appreciate you really being so generous today, and just generally. So thank you for being here. And for anyone listening, if you want to connect with Dan personally, I'm going to have his link in the show notes. If you want to come on the podcast, we'll have a link for that too, or you know someone that you think will be amazing to speak about people and culture. And also you can connect with me on LinkedIn too. That's it from us. Thanks so much, Dan.
Cool. Thank you very much. It's been very enjoyable.
That's been. Take care.
Thank you.